Good morning. A warm welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley's Sunday Forum. My name is Senna Havasi, a longtime member of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a secular and reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value health, freedom, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. Um, if these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community. Um, Membership forms are available on our website. A special welcome to those who are with us for the first time. We invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. You can find all our events listed on our website. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist community. You can find out how to donate to our organization on our website, www.humanists.org. Be sure to have an S after the human.
Okay, so this morning we're going to have a speaker who is a published author, and his name is Matt Schlegel. He's committed to developing highly effective style diverse teams and giving them the tools and strategies to navigate environments defined by VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and tackle challenges that are seemingly impossible. So help me welcome Matt. We have a hand for him, and he will start speaking.
Thank you, Carl. So great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. Always nice to see some familiar faces as well. So thanks for that. All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about my journey in working in climate. So, and the name of this is What Can We Do? And you'll see why in just a little bit. But just a little bit about me. I'm a technologist. I had a career in technology. Along the way, I discovered that leading teams and getting teams to work together effectively was more important than the actual technical challenges that we were trying to solve. And so I became very fascinated in that and ended up developing some different strategies, pretty novel strategies for helping teams work together and collaborate. And I ended up starting a consulting business in that. And I wrote a book about that and my techniques, which the book is called Teamwork 9.0. And one of the subtexts for the book was thinking about how we're going to get people to come together to solve the climate crisis. Because ever since I was in college, I became very aware that we were living beyond the capacity of our planet to support all of us. And that was in the 80s, and it just has continually worsened over time. So by the time I was writing the book, I was thinking, okay, I need to really get focused on climate. So the book was published March 2020, right? So we went into COVID, and so my book tour was essentially a virtual book tour, which I did for about a year. And after that, then I came to the realization I really need to start working on climate. So this was about 2021 where I really got serious about it. And at that point, I got to meet Jerry as well, because he was one of the people who was already serious about it. And he was a mentor for me. So it's great to see Jerry here. One of the things that I did as a part of this was I organized a climate group. And the group that I ended up organizing was affiliated with an international group called Fridays for Future. Now, you may know Fridays for Future was started originally by a Swedish climate activist named Greta Thunberg. And it became, a very big movement in Europe, and where students all over Europe were taking Friday off, not going to school, and demanding of their local governments, state governments, national governments action on climate. And it's a shame that the wind was really taken out of those sails when COVID hit, because everybody had to stay inside and they couldn't meet back out on the streets. So by the time I was starting this, I wanted something where people could physically get together. I wanted it to be a weekly pace, because if you do things weekly, that it's never really out of mind. I don't know if you've ever done things monthly, but you do it and then you kind of forget about it until it's coming back up. But if you do things on a weekly basis, it's like it always stays kind of fresh and top of mind. And then I've grown that organization and had people come in, and probably now around 200 people total have come in and out of the group. And there's a core of about a dozen of us that still meet very regularly with other people coming in. But it's an amazing group, amazing experience. And as of this last Friday, we had our 179th consecutive meeting. So it's thank you. It's been quite a journey. So that's just a little bit about me and what got me into climate. Now, yesterday was No King's Day, and I just wanted to raise of hands who participated in No King's Day. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so about half of you participated in No King's Day. I bring this up because it's another instance where people have felt passionate about something and have physically gotten together, either organized it themselves or worked with affiliate organizations to participate in this mass rally. And one of the things that occurred to me as I've been studying this is that there's this rule called the 3.5% rule. And we, in order to actually make change in the world, kind of transformational change, it only takes about 3.5% of us to do it. And so I'm always keeping that in the back of my mind, is like, how do we get 3.5% of the people really focused on climate? Because once we hit that tipping point, I think, things will move. But meanwhile, we've got this, tyrant now leading our government, and people are becoming very passionate about not having an autocrat in charge of our government. It's unbelievable, the people that were here, and people are getting angry and people are mobilizing. So yesterday, I participated in 2 different events. In the upper left there is, I don't know, can you see my slides in the room? Oh, that's too bad. Okay. So anyway, I participated in 2 events. One at Stanford Shopping Center, which was an amazing event. We sang and chanted, and then we actually did a march through the mall, and just it was just so much fun. Then after that, there was another event in Palo Alto. There was a march from Town and Country Village over to Rinconada Park from 2 to 3. And I couldn't be at that one because I had to go back to my house, but a few people in our group, including my mom, was in that march. So it was great to see her. At Rinconada Park, we had a bunch of great speakers, including Joan Baez. She was there, and she spoke. And I think we received about 1,000 RSVPs, and we ended up, I think they estimate around 3,000 people showed up. So you can't see the slides here. Do you want to take a break and see how we can get the slides up on the screen? Okay. I thought we did that. Zoom. Okay. There it is. Oh, do I need to see? I'm in share now. No, I don't know how to
Get to
Oh, here we go.
That's
Okay,
it.
got it. Okay. And then we can go back over here. Sure. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. So, all right, so now you can see the slides. So these are the actions. The people, this is a shot of Rinconada Park. So it was an amazing turnout there. And these slides are from an organization called Pro Bono Photo. And so they, will assign photographers to come and photograph events. The one in the upper right there, you can see me talking somewhat passionately. So our Congress member, Sam Liccardo, was there. And he was, filibustering a little bit and not answering questions. And so I finally got frustrated and asked him to, seriously answer a question about, what is he doing to take care of the people in our community, especially immigrants, people of color who are under attack from the federal government in the form of ICE. And so I wanted to hear what he had to say about that. So that's why I just stood up and asked that question. So, and he didn't really answer, but there was another speaker who actually spoke in Spanish to, that community at the rally, which I really appreciated. And then Joan Baez also sang a song in Spanish, for that community. So I was very, very grateful, that, we were acknowledging that this really is an urgent issue. All right, so let's get back to climate. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's an organization called the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and they have put together a dashboard for the different categories in which we can assess where we are in terms of the boundaries within which we are either polluting or consuming resources on our planet. And I won't go through all of them, but just there's climate change, there's ocean acidification, fresh water, there's all these different categories that they've come up with. And then you can see the green is within bounds and the yellow and the red are out of bounds. And at this point, we're pretty much out of bounds on most of the areas. In other words, we are consuming resources of our planet faster than it can regenerate them. And in fact, the last time we were living within the capacity of the planet was 1970. So ever since 1970, we've been consuming, more than the Earth can regenerate. And one of the things that this strikes me of is if you put a colony of bacteria into a petri dish and you let it grow, it starts out small, and then it grows and grows and grows, and then it just fills up and it consumes all the resources in that petri dish. And then what happens? Right? There's no more. So essentially, that's what we are now doing to our planet. And it's alarming. It alarms me. It alarms climate scientists. It alarms anybody who's paying attention. And that's why those of us who are working on this really want to figure out a way to get to a system whereby we're not doing that. So this is a recent comic, and I'll read it to you if you can't see it, but it says, "We had a very big climate conference this year, and if you do not relent, I warn you, we will have another." Right? And they got one little scrawny human there and the huge climate coming after us. Mother Nature has been so generous, provided so much for us in terms of all the life that sustains us and that have allowed us to become who we are. And at some point, we lost our connection with nature, and we came to think that we're somehow disconnected from nature, and that and rather being a part of it, we're separate. We can be stewards of it. We're not stewards. We are intimately a part of that web of life. And if that web of life collapses, we collapse. And, and it occurs to me now that we have consumed so much of what Mother Nature has generously offered us over the few hundreds of thousands of years that humans have been around, we have now transformed Mother Nature into the repo man instead of the generous Mother Nature she was. So, and as I'm working on this, I often get the question, what can I do? What can I do? And people say, I recycle, I have an electric car, and I've tried to electrify my house, I have solar panels, and all of those things are great. They're really great. And and I've done the same. I've pretty much electrified my whole house. I live in Palo Alto, where our electrons are all from renewable sources, so I feel pretty confident that I'm not burning any fossil fuels, which is what we need to do. But an individual's action isn't enough. And so when somebody asks me, what can I do? I say that's the wrong question to ask. And the right question is, what can we do? Because this is where we can make a difference. Like I said, when we have that 3.5% of us that are passionately working on this, then transformation can happen. But we're not there yet. just in terms of, I monitor, like issues that, people when they're voting, like how many percentage of the voting population are climate voters, and it's not bad, it's maybe one, or sometimes I've seen as high as 2%. But it needs to be, at least double that for us to really make a change. So, so this is this 3.5% rule that I was mentioning, and this was an article that was in the BBC, the British Broadcasting Center's Services news feed, and what it said was that nonviolent protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts, and those engaging a threshold of 3.5% of the population have never failed to bring about change. So that's the encouraging thing to me, is knowing that if we can get there, then we will be able to do something about this. And just curiously, I saw this morning, and there's an organization called 5051, which I believe is an organization that's associated with veterans. And they were monitoring how many people were on the street yesterday on No King's Day. And they estimate that 11 million of us came out, which just coincidentally happens to be that 3.5% number for the US population. So this is very encouraging to me to see this, that people have had enough of what's going on and are wanting to do something about it. And why I bring this up, how is this related to climate? Well, you probably know, probably the number one thing that we can do right now to address the climate crisis is to not have the Trump regime tearing down everything that we've been able to accomplish over the last few decades, because he's reversing it. So job number one, in my opinion, is, get him out. So now that we have a coalition of people who want to do the same thing, I look at them now as climate activists, because they are. So I have been thinking a lot about, what motivates people to actually engage and get active. And it occurs to me that humans have this innate sense of morality that we see on the playground. And this is, before kids have learned, anything about morality, or they just know that when they're playing together, that, if I'm playing with a toy and then you come over and grab that toy away from me, that's not right. That's not fair. So fairness is like this innate sense that we have when we know that, somebody is doing something that isn't right, essentially, inflicting some harm on somebody by taking something away from them. And, adults have, a fancier word for fairness, and it's called, being just. And we have, and it's so important to us that we've dedicated a whole branch of our government to justice. So it's essentially adjudicating the morality of fairness for our society. And I bring this up because it occurs to me that there are two key ingredients to mobilizing a lot of people, enough to get to that 3.5%. And the first one is a social injustice. And the second one is an existential threat. As soon as you have those two things together, people start to get on the streets. And, we saw that in the civil rights movement. We saw that in the Me Too movement. We saw that in the Black Lives Matter movement. And we're seeing it again now because people realize that our government now taking resources away from the people, giving them to this cadre of oligarchs that we've empowered, it's not just. Coming in and, taking people of color, immigrants, out of their places of work or out of their homes and deporting them and tearing up families. That's not just. Going into schools and criminalizing students who are trying to stand up for their rights it's not just. And so we're seeing this now play out, and people feel like they're under attack and they're being threatened, and that's that existential threat. Especially when you see your family sent off to a gulag in a different country, which we haven't seen since Germany. That's that's when it did happen. So people are getting active, and I think this is why, is because we're now seeing these two key ingredients. So when you think about like, well, what can I do, and if you get to that point where you want to do something, I ask people, well, what are you passionate about? What particular injustice really is, it makes you angry, mad, want to do something? Because if you find that injustice, that's where you will have your own energy to be able to sustain a fight. And so, and I give this example. This is Greta Thunberg, and she famously got up in front at the UN and gave a speech, and really criticized world leaders for not doing more, because they know that they need to be doing more, and that they're essentially stealing her future. So I use her as an example because it really got her, very passionate about wanting to do something. And so, what is it that you want to do? And if it's getting, Trump out of office, or, Elon out of office, or, those are good things to do. But you need to kind of tap into what that is. Then once you have that, you will find that you can either create a group of like-minded people, so find people who feel strongly and similarly to that particular injustice. You can find a group, or you can create it. So and here's some of the things that you can think about when you're thinking about joining a group. Is like, do you want it to be local? Do you want to focus on local issues? Do you want to focus on state issues? Do you want to focus on national issues, international issues? There are things to do at all those levels. For me, I wanted to do something at the local level, and the reason why was because when President Obama was in office. And I was so hopeful that he would actually do something about climate. And when he did not immediately reject the permit on the Keystone XL pipeline, I was infuriated, because he could have. And I went to my congressperson at the time, Anna Eshoo, and I asked her that very question in her office. I was in Washington, D.C. I asked her that question. And she looks at me in the eye and says, "Nothing in this city happens without the permission of the fossil fuel industry." And so once she said that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to beat my head against the wall on that. Now, I'll let other people who have a little more resilience than me do that work. It's good work. It's got to get done. But I think it takes a little different personality than my personality. I wanted to do something where I could actually make a difference and see it happen. And that's when I switched over to doing local work, because I get to meet all my council members. I get to hang out with local people in my community that are working on these things together. I get to meet Jerry. So the other thing to you want to ask yourself is whether you want to do it virtually or in person. And I think after COVID, I was craving that personal connection, and but I still wanted to be sensitive to getting together in enclosed spaces, with COVID still floating around, and which, by the way, it is today. So everybody stay healthy and safe. And so that's why we chose to meet out in front of City Hall outside, and that's where we meet every Friday. And fortunately, we live in a place where it rains very infrequently on Fridays. Only like maybe 4 times this year did we actually have to find another place to meet. And we just move right into the City Hall lobby. So if it rains, we move into the lobby. So it's a very convenient place for us to meet. But that's something else that you want to think about. And of course, there's this hybrid, so many possibilities. Frequency. I talked about this a little bit already, but I chose the weekly just so that it always stayed top of mind. I do the meeting, I write a little summary of what happened, I send that out, and it just gives people this sense of all the different action. Because what I do is I just solicit, so what did you do this week? What did you hear this week? And I get all of these inputs from people. Then I summarize them in my email so everybody can see everybody else, what everybody else is thinking about. And it's just a great way for us to collectively process what we're going through. And then, of course, you need to find a group with a purpose that aligns with your purpose. And mine is climate focused, but now I've joined other groups to take down Tesla, because as long as Musk has Tesla money, he will be meddling in our democracy, in our politics, in our government. And so we really need to take that away from him. And we need to show that we can do that. We, the people, need to show that we can take a company away from an oligarch. And we're doing a pretty good job. It's the stock price is tanked, and the board is very angry with Elon. And so it's what we're doing is working, and we feel really good about it. But we also know that we need to keep going until he no longer has control over that company. So we're going to do that. And And once we do that, then we can, that's a message to the other oligarchs too. Don't mess around with us because we'll come after you next. All right. So these are the different groups that I'm participating in right now. So FFF is the Fridays for Future, which we do every Friday. I do the Tesla there's a Tesla takedown rally on Wednesdays in front of the Tesla showroom, and we meet out there for about 2 hours. There's one on Sunday at Stanford Shopping Center, and do that for 2 hours. And then I do one monthly event that is affiliated with some, scientists / Stanford professors who are, organizing to raise awareness about how science funding is being decimated and how that is impacting schools' ability to do research. It's impacting the students who are doing that research. It is causing a massive brain drain in our country. Our country has, always attracted, smart people from all around the world to come and study here. And that has now reversed. People are fleeing. And meanwhile, at least, this is what I've heard, at least France, Spain, and China now offer stipends and packages for scientists to come and live in their countries. So we need to fix that, because we need science, because science is essentially the beacon for truth. So another thing that I just want to mention is that when you get together in a group, people are people, and people have different styles and different opinions and different approaches, and this is a lot about what I talk about in my book. But we need to have some, if we're going to work together, with some intentional community with a purpose, we need to have some working together agreements. And so these are the agreements that my climate group have come up with. And I'll just read them to you in case you can't see this, but it's 1, welcome all comers. Make sure everyone feels heard. Practice generous listening, which means let people talk and don't interrupt them. Don't monopolize the conversation, but make sure that you take your turn and then you let other people say what is on their mind as well. And then we added also take care of yourself, because it can be hard work, and all of us need to take a time out or take a break, and we just need to understand and appreciate that's really important. And we need people to be able to recharge their batteries when they need to, so that they can, come back into the fight raring to go, because that's what we need. So then, my little climate group, we'll get, maybe 10 people, show up at a meeting, and even that, it's just like, everybody's like, why don't we have a bigger group? Why don't we have 20 of us here? Why don't we have 30 of us? And and I don't have that same expectation, but I think, some people feel frustrated that we're not, our particular group isn't this huge group. But, I remind them when they say that we are a part of an organization, Fridays for Future, that has thousands of people all over the globe, and we are network with them. I attend weekly meetings, with the USA local groups, where we just get on and share what we're doing. And so, our group is a part of this huge network of international groups. But more than that, we are now a part of all the different groups in our local community. And, I just feel so lucky to live where I do, because there are so many groups working on so many related issues with so much passion, that overlap with what we're trying to accomplish. And so we will do joint events together with them. And we'll go and maybe attend one of their rallies. They'll come and attend one of our rallies. Sometimes when we, have an issue that comes up at city council, we all tell each other, okay, let's all go to city council and speak. So you're even though we're not alone because we have a group, our group is not alone because we have groups of groups that we are networked with and affiliated with, and work on that Venn diagram of overlapping passions between the groups that we can all get behind. So when you're doing this, definitely look for those types of groups and make sure that they are integrated with you as well. So one of the things that the people who don't want us to organize and build power, what they do is they try to divide and conquer us. And unfortunately, humans are very susceptible to being divided and conquered. And I think we just need to appreciate that that is a part of who we are, become conscious of it, and then work to overcome it. When kids are on the playground and they're playing, they're just playing. They don't see the color of skin. They don't even care about the language. They just know how to play together. They just play together, right? All of that stuff that divides us comes later. It's taught to us. And so we just need to be aware that that socialization of dehumanization isn't something that is innate to us. It's something that we're taught by the people who want us to be divided and to keep us from accumulating power. And those organizations tend to be very hierarchical. They tend to be very patriarchal. Oftentimes they're very white. And so, white supremacy now is a very hierarchical, patriarchal structure, power structure. And so we just need to be aware of that and not, and try to avoid falling into traps that they want us to fall into that keep us divided. So we always need to be thinking about how to build coalitions and not be divided. And the one example that I will give right now that is just so stunning to me is Gaza, and how whenever there is like a fascist uprising, just the most durable anti-fascist community that I know of is the Jewish community. They went through the Holocaust. They know it. They see it, um, and they want to fight it. They don't want us to go through that again. Never again. And now, because of Gaza, where we are just seeing the complete evisceration of a whole area, and essentially ethnocide. It's a colonial project. The Jewish community is split over this, and it just feeds right into the the right that is trying to divide us, and it's they see it as a golden opportunity, and so and it saddens me that is happening, but it's something we also need to understand and to resist. So let's talk a little bit about the brain. Brains want to save energy. That's like the number one thing it wants to do. It's always trying to conserve energy. And there are a few things that take a lot of energy. One of them is thinking. Thinking takes a lot of energy. And so the brain comes up with tricks to get us to avoid thinking. And these tricks are often called prejudices. Because if we have a prejudice, that means we've already prejudged it. So I don't have to think about it because I've already made up my mind about it. And so I can just have a prejudice. And when I'm countered with that, I already know what to do. So overcoming prejudice requires thinking and requires energy. And so, just beware that our brain is trying to trick us into not thinking about our prejudices because it wants to save energy. And then same thing, to actually take action on something, that takes energy. And the brain wants to save energy. So the brain will always try to come up with excuses to try to tempt you into not taking action so that it can save energy. So just beware of this. And, and there's a number of these unconscious biases that we have that, get us that keep us from thinking and keep us from deviating from our low, energy trajectories that we have. Normalcy bias is where our brain tricks us into thinking that everything's fine. I wake up in the morning, I look outside, it's a beautiful day, my democracy is crumbling before my eyes, but I look outside and it's like, oh, everything's fine, So you have to avoid being tricked by your brain. Bystander effect, if you do see something happening, then it's like, oh, somebody else will take care of it. The bystander effect, it actually is what got me mad at our House member Sam Liccardo yesterday, because during his speech he started talking about Peoria. It's like, those people in Peoria, need to be convinced, to do something. And I was like, no, you're our representative. We're your constituents. Don't worry about Peoria. Let them worry about themselves. Let's worry about what is happening right here. The people in our community, the immigrants in our community are targeted by ICE. What are you doing to defend them? But he's essentially trying to deflect and not, to get out of taking action that he should be doing to defend his own constituents. So I'll skip survivor's bias. It's pretty, straightforward. It's just like, I made it this far, I'll be fine. Backfire effect. This is an important one because when confronted with a truth that would require your brain to think and maybe take action. One of the things that we do is deny. And, people often ask me, that same thing. It's like, there's so many climate deniers. There's so many climate deniers. What are we going to do about that? And I'm like, don't worry about it. You just don't worry about that. That's not your problem. We're all in denial, really. We are all in denial. Why don't you first work on your own denial and overcome that and start taking action, and not worry about, this blob of climate deniers out there, because it's just such a natural reaction. Like, if it weren't happening, I would be surprised. That there are so many climate deniers out there just highlights how serious this problem is to me. But don't worry about the climate deniers. You worry about your own denial and overcome that so that you can start taking action. That's what I advise people who bring that point up. All right, so this I'm wrapping up now. This is the first climate sign that I ever made, and a mutual friend of Jerry and my, in her backyard, I made this sign because when I wrote my book, my book is about getting teams to solve problems, and step one in that is acknowledging the problem, and then having a vision for how you want the world when the problem is solved. That's step one. But step two is, do you have an emotional connection? Do you have an emotional connection with that problem? Do you have an emotional connection with creating that world that solves that problem, where that problem is eliminated? That's step two in problem solving. We all do this, because we really don't do anything unless we have that emotional connection. And so, it occurred to me that that's where the climate movement is stuck right now, is not enough people yet feel emotionally engaged with it. And it's probably because, their lives are fine and they're not getting the injustice. They're not sensing the injustice. And they don't yet see climate as an existential threat. So it's harder to get people to connect because they're not feeling the injustice. They're not feeling that existential threat. Now, people like Jerry and me, who tend to live more in the future and play things out, we see it. We see what is happening, what is going to happen. In my mind, it's very clear what's happening and what's going to happen. There's just a little time lag on it. And so, I know that people will very soon start to feel the injustice. And I think what's happening right now in our country is a part of it, because the elites know about climate change, even though they deny it. Trump denies it all the time. Oh, it's a hoax. Blah, blah, blah. They know. They know. And they know there's not a lot of time left, and that they have to smash and grab and take as much as they can while they still can. That's what they're doing. For instance, for climate change, what are the essential things that you need? You need to have a temperate climate. You need to have fresh water. You need to have a place to grow food, right? And all of that is moving north. So what's north of the United States? Canada. Why do you think they want to go to Canada? So anyway, we're all going to feel it. And the other thing that I did when I started on this journey was I allowed myself to feel all this. I essentially allowed myself to move all the way through the grief cycle. I overcame my denial. I got angry, at the fossil fuel industry's lies, at the politicians' lies. I went into negotiation. Well, what can I do about it? What can I get them to do to overcome those lies and actually start taking action? And then you beat your head against the wall, when you get that message from your representative that you can't do anything because the fossil fuel industry won't let you. And then you go into depression. And I allowed myself to sit in grief for a year, which is so against my nature. I'm just I move through grief very quickly, but I just allowed myself to just sit in it. I would, just be sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden I would just start weeping spontaneously. Just, yes. Time. Okay. It's almost done. So, nothing. I did that for a year, and then I kind of snapped out of it, and I moved just into acceptance, which is I'm going to now just do everything I can, save as much as I can, minimize harm as much as I can, help my neighbors and my friends manage through what's coming. And so that kind of is my life mission now, is to do that. So allow yourself to feel that it's really important, and because then what other people are going to have to go through. So that is my talk. If you want to ever stop by and say hi in Palo Alto, you're always welcome. We're there most Fridays at noon in front of City Hall. There's a QR code and there's a link to sign up for the newsletter. You can also get it here. And thank you so much for listening. And do we still have time for questions, or do I do that? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Pardon me? Stop. Okay.
Yeah, so oops. Be sure. What's going on here? Be sure and raise your hands if you want to ask a question. If you're online, do it with the come on, the the one that looks like a little love symbol. And locally in the room, raise your hand, and I will be. Wow, I wonder why this is so low. Yeah, okay. And remember that if you're in the room here, hold the mic very close to your mouth, like so, not like this, like this. Okay, does anyone have any questions for our speaker? Okay, got one here in the room.
It's very divisive to take unrelated issues like Gaza and throw that in. Hamas is a theocracy. They're anti-gay to the extent they throw people off buildings because they're gay. They throw atheists off the building because they're atheists. And they're supported by the fossil fuel industry. The money comes from places that make their money from oil. So this is, and in terms of Jews, most Jews despise Hamas because Hamas has said in 1988 that they want to exterminate all the Jews. They said in October 7th, after they did that pogrom that killed 1,200 people in a very small country, they said they would do it over and over and over again until they were stopped. So please don't bring in Hamas if you want. It's just a divisive issue that has nothing to do with fossil fuels, except if we get rid of fossil fuels, then we'll bankrupt the people behind Hamas.
Okay. Oh, back here.
You have a reaction?
Go ahead.
Mary, would you like a reaction? Yeah. So, yes, we talk about this a lot in our group, and that's why I brought it up earlier, because it is dividing us. This issue is dividing us, and it's a real shame. Now, I want to just get back to answer that. The comment is, if you go to that play yard and there are, 5, 6-year-olds there, and you ask them what they think about bombing schools, what do you think they would say?
That Hamas should not be launching missiles. I would say that Hamas should not be launching missiles from those schoolyards, hoping that Israel will try to take out those missiles. They discovered in a tunnel in one of the Hamas holes that led to hospital. That's where they discovered a Hamas leader that they killed. That's a fact. So I hate that. I hate people that try to kill me and then try to make it hide in places where schools, mosques, and apartment buildings. That's despicable.
Right. So, so you would tell these kids on the playground that, no, this is your question. So if I understand what you said, you would tell the kids, I'm sorry, we have to kill children in schools because there's a bad man there.
Okay, well, it's going on too long, so let's
So, first of all, my major point is this has nothing to do with climate change. And you're dividing people. In terms of what has to happen, Hamas is indiscriminately sending those missiles. And if it kills children, they're fine with it. In fact, they did kill children. They killed children with their own hands. 1,200 people died that day. And they said they would do it over and over again. So if you want to you want to think it's okay as long as they're Jewish children to die, that's your opinion. But I don't think that's a hill you should divide the movement on.
I'm not, I have this same conversation back, forth, ping pong all day long with people. So I understand that. To me, all connected. To me, it gets back to the morality of fairness and, explaining to that 5-year-old on the playground why you're doing it. And once you can do that and you can tell me what is happening in Gaza and explain it to a 5-year-old and justify it to a 5-year-old, and you can do that, then I want to understand that.
And what would you say to
I think the children would be abhorred with that, and they would say it's not right.
no,
I thought it was abhorrent.
Too much conversation back.
Okay.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Dana St. George. And for me, the situation in Gaza is a climate catastrophe. And it's very upsetting to me to think that my government is giving selling or giving or whatever, huge amounts of money and armaments so that this war can continue. And the war, all war, is climate catastrophe, a human catastrophe, and it should be outlawed.
I agree.
Anybody else have a question? I have one. It turns out that for example, we say that corporations are in denial, and they are not. What they're fighting is the fact that we're forcing them to spend a lot of money in order to solve the climate problem. And their constituents don't care about it. And so they support, I just want you to speak to that. They support, essentially they support the people who are against climate change because it's going to cost them a hell of a lot of money to do what needs to be done. So it's not like they're in denial. I don't think it's denial. I think it's something else. Why don't you speak to that? How do you?
Yeah, thank you. So corporations want to make money. That's what they want to do. That's, their fiscal responsibility is to make money. And they will do whatever they can in order to keep those profits going. And for the fossil fuel industry, it's, digging up, ancient sunlight and selling it to people in the form that they can either burn it or turn it into plastic or pesticides or, some other noxious thing that is really causing so much environmental harm. And other companies, they rely on those products and they rely on that energy for them to make money. And so, you're right, they're not in denial, but they will promote denialism in order to keep their profits up. And so that is just one of the things that we need to be aware of, and why we put in rules and regulations on corporations, and why when the corporations take over our government, they roll back all those rules and regulations because then they can make more money. So, so it's just the situation that we have to acknowledge and work to overcome. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, good enough. Anybody else have any question? Sandra has her hand up.
Yeah, well, your image of the brain and the brain being lazy, do you think that's a metaphor we can apply to the corporations, that if they had switched early on to alternative kinds of fuel, they could have made as much money from those as they do from fossil fuels? But why did they not do that? Why is it just laziness that they stick with the thing they know?
I think it's a great question. And, when you look back in the 80s and the early 90s, when we had a Texas oil man in the form of George H.W. Bush saying, climate change has no chance against the United States. We're going to tackle this. That's out of an oil man's mouth. But then I think the oil industry realized that to strand all of their assets, which is what you need to do, you need to stop drilling, you need to stop burning, you need to stop making plastics, you need to strand all those assets. It would be a huge impact on their business. And it was a lot more cost effective to follow the playbook of the tobacco industry, who managed to make lots and lots of money off of us for decades by getting doctors to come out smoking, saying, don't worry about it. It's like, okay, well, the tobacco industry managed to keep that gravy train going. Why don't we try that? Because we'll just use the same firm, we'll use the same playbook, just see where that takes us. And so they did. So essentially, how many decades did we smoke beyond the time that we knew we shouldn't be smoking? We're probably that same number of decades now. The 90s, the 2000s, 2010s. It's 3 decades. Probably smoked longer than we should, but now we're here. Problem is that the accumulation of carbon in the atmosphere isn't something we can easily get away from now. And now we have to just live with it. So the consequences of using that strategy and continuing to make money on our planet and all life on it is devastating. But that's why they did it. It's just cheaper.
I have another comment since no one else has a comment. Have you ever heard of what's called the benefit corporation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it might be wise to maybe include something about having a movement in that direction as well, because it would not maximize profit. That's been the issue. How do we get that? But then that becomes another thing we have to get a change in, and like almost as a requirement, to be a corporation. So have you ever approached the problem in that way?
Yes. So, again, so the question is a B Corp better than a regular corp? Because B Corp, you have some kind of sustainability as a part of the mission. It's not just financial. It's about considering more constituents in your decision making, customers, workers, management, and I think it's an interesting step, but it's still a hierarchical structure. It's a hierarchical power structure. And it is susceptible to the manipulations of hierarchies. And so the work environment that I think is more consistent with one that would treat everybody equitably is a worker co-op, where everybody who works at this company is also a shareholder, and everybody gets one share, everybody gets one vote, and everybody gets to decide collectively, what the pay scales are, that who gets to be the leader, that it's all elected democratically. And these companies, not only do they exist, but there are examples of very large companies in Spain, the Mondragon Corporation in Spain, hundreds of thousands of people. So, they can exist, and they tend, as long as if you're a worker and you have to make a decision about whether to pollute the creek that your kids play in or not, you're probably not going to pollute the creek. But if you are in some high rise in some other state and you say you've got to get rid of that stuff, pollute the creek, then you get pollution in the creek, because the decision making is so far removed from where the harm is occurring.
Okay.
It did. It did. Some company who had a headquarter in Palo Alto and moved to Texas, and then polluted the creek in Palo Alto. Tesla. So yeah.
I wonder if you have some of us are participating in organizations that are actively addressing this problem as best we can. Some of us send checks to various entities that we think are effective. Do you have, say, 2 or 3 organizations that would feel that if everybody wrote a check to one or more of them?
So the question is, how do you donate money? If that's the way you want to contribute, and it's a very important way to contribute. And so I'll give you some examples of what I do, and then I'll give you the guideline. Okay. So first of all, I have a band, and we will go and play at climate rallies, and we collect tips. And I tell everybody at the rally that, all the money that is being collected here is going to go to the host organization. And we work with organizations that we support. So it's hyper local, and it's like just this direct connection. You can see that the money is just going exactly 100% of it exactly to what you want to have happen. We play in the park a lot. There's an organization called the Opportunity Center. It might be is it Avenidas? It might be an Avenidas. It might be the same owners as this facility or a manager. But anyway, they, when we collect money at the park, then we will often donate that over to the Opportunity Center, which helps out a lot of the unhoused people in our community. So that's kind of where I'm at, and sometimes I'll get enlisted by organizations that are doing climate work to help with fundraising. And I chip in some of my own money, but I also chip in my time, make calls, call on my friends, my network, and say, this year I'm supporting this organization because I really feel like they're doing a good job. So the bottom line is, find something that you're emotionally connected to, that you feel passionate about supporting. Ideally you're already a member of it, and you're contributing not only your money but your time and that passion and that energy. And and make it as successful as possible.
Okay. If I want to write checks for $100 to a couple of organizations this afternoon, where should I send them?
You know what? I don't have a quick and easy answer for you. I don't have a quick and easy answer. I'm going to let you. I need to let you. That's your homework, is to go through that process, figuring out what you're passionate about, and you're welcome to send me your thoughts, and then I can have a conversation with you, and I can do some research on them if you want. But I think that is take yourself through that process, because that's the learning. That's where you're going to use that thinking energy, overcome that reluctance to think, overcome that reluctance to act.
Perhaps someone else in the room would have a suggestion for an organization.
Oh, Jerry.
Actually, is it working? Yeah. Actually, I'm a bit surprised you don't have, because I did see a slide where you listed several organizations there. So,
So I can put up my slide, because these are all of the groups that I'm currently affiliated with, that I contribute time, money, energy to. I don't know if they're 100% aligned with what you're doing. So let's see here. You can't see it yet, right?
Listen to this again, since it'll be on our website.
Okay. I will share this for you. Okay. All right. So Fridays for Future, we take donations. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom is a great organization.
no.
The American Association of University Professors, I believe they take donations. Indivisible, it's just, they organized the whole event yesterday. They're a great place to give some money to restore their coffers after yesterday, and help them plan towards the next action, because there'll be more. So those are some examples. Of course, 350, Silicon Valley is another one that we work with pretty closely, and they take donations as well.
So I wanted just a comment, which you can respond to or not as you wish. One of the things that I find really interesting about the climate issue is that, according to Yale Climate Communications, about 25% of Americans are alarmed by climate change. But when you go around and present a list of issues to people and say, prioritize them, climate change is usually not on the top 3. What's going on there? I don't know.
My conclusion is they're not feeling the injustice. They're not yet feeling the existential threat. The ones that are at the top 3 are like jobs. I need a job so that I can feed my family. That is, it's not fair. I don't have a job. And if I don't feed my family, they are going to be threatened. So those are the things that get top priority.
Well, actually, it seems like it does affect just about everybody now, because the insurance rates are going up so fast. It's getting harder and harder to get various kinds of insurance. That affects everybody.
That's
and then,
right.
Of course, there are all the people, that have had their houses burn up and so forth.
And that's why I think we're seeing so many people on the street right now, because people are starting to really feel it.
Okay, this is going to be the last question because we have to close down now.
I think Jerry brought up a good point, which is the fires, for example, in Los Angeles is an issue that makes it more immediate.
Okay, all right, let's give our speaker a hand and we're gonna be
Thank
saying
you.
now.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all your great questions.